Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere dark, noisy, and not at all sterile. You're kneeling on a dirt floor, your hands are sticky, and there's a screaming man clutching your cloak because his molar is halfway out of his face. Welcome to medieval dentistry, if you can call it that. The room smells like sheep tallow, sweat, and the coppery tinge of blood. There's no bright overhead light, no clean gloves, and no sense of hygiene, unless you count wiping your tools on your apron as cleaning. You're not even a dentist, technically. That job doesn't exist yet. You're a sort of village fixer. You stitch wounds, pull splinters, trim hair, and, when someone's face swells up like a poisoned melon, you're the unlucky soul tasked with helping. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. I always love seeing the global bedtime roll call. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your dental instruments are a mismatched bunch: a rusted pair of iron pincers, a wooden wedge, and a bottle of something alcoholic that smells more like kerosene than comfort. There's no such thing as anesthesia, not really. You hand the patient a leather strap to bite down on, pour him a cup of ale to dull the nerves, and pray he doesn't punch you out halfway through. People in your village don't come to you at the first sign of a toothache. No, they wait until the pain's so bad they can't eat, speak, or sleep. Their face swells, their breath smells like sour milk and rotting meat, and they beg for help. That's when you're called, like some grim reaper of molars. The worst part? You don't actually know what you're doing. Nobody does. You just go by feel and experience, meaning whatever you learned watching someone else do it once at a fair. Maybe you remember how the old man yanked teeth out at the harvest festival, always with a flourish and a wink. So now, you imitate that swagger, except you're sweating through your tunic because you're not sure if this guy's tooth is going to come out, or snap in half. When you grip the offending tooth with your iron pincers, you feel the wiggle. That's good, right? Except as you tug, the man howls and flails, and you're yanked off balance. The tooth creaks but won't let go, like some stubborn splinter of agony embedded in his jaw. You twist, you pull, and there's a horrible crunch, not the good kind, and suddenly blood gushes and something white drops into your lap. Victory? Sort of. Problem is, you might have broken the tooth off at the root. That means infection. And in this age, infection means death. Or worse, months of agony while your face slowly balloons and leaks pus. Cheery, isn't it? Historians still argue whether most medieval tooth extractions were fatal or just miserable. There's no real way to track outcomes, since death records rarely note bad tooth day as a cause. But we know enough to say this: you probably wouldn't survive more than a few dental emergencies in your lifetime. Mainstream fact. The first real dental manuals didn't appear until the 1500s, and even then, they were vague at best. Before that, dentistry was lumped in with barbary, surgery, or good old trial and error. And it shows. Now for a fun fringe tidbit: some early dentists believed that tying a frog to your jaw could draw out the pain. Seriously. A whole, live frog, croaking, wriggling, strapped to your face. If that didn't work, maybe it distracted you from the toothache long enough to feel like progress. You rinse your hands in a bowl of tepid water and wipe them on your apron. The man you just helped is passed out from pain and wine. His wife kneels beside him, whispering prayers and holding the tooth like a cursed gem. You hand her the pincers with a shrug. No one claps. No one thanks you. They just carry him off like a broken barrel. You clean your tools, meaning, you dunk them in ash and fire for a few moments, and head outside. The village is quiet, just the crackle of torches and the whisper of wind through thatched roofs. You wonder who will be next. There's always someone next. Being a medieval dentist isn't a calling. It's not even a trade. It's a burden. You're the last stop between agony and the afterlife. You never sleep well. You dream of cracking jaws and screams. And in the morning, you'll probably be asked to help deliver a baby goat or dig a new privy. Because that's life in the Middle Ages, multitasking, blood, and absolutely no dental school. You wake up to knocking, fist on wood, sharp and insistent. It's barely dawn, and your knees are already sore. Someone's outside your door, hunched in the misty gray of morning, holding a cloth to their jaw like it's the only thing holding their head together. Another one. Swollen cheek, bloodshot eyes, and a mouth that probably hasn't closed properly in a week. You squint at the man and gesture him inside. No use pretending to be busy, he knows exactly what you do. He sits on the stool by the hearth, mouth slightly open, eyes wild. You can already see the problem, a blackened molar near the back, rimmed and red and probably oozing something vile. But this one's different. He doesn't want a tooth pulled. No, he heard from his cousin that you've got leeches. The little squirmy kind. And he wants you to draw the poison out. You suppress a sigh, reach for the jar, and try to remember which leeches are still alive. See, back in medieval times, bloodletting was all the rage. If someone felt sick, it was assumed their bodily humors were out of balance, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Naturally, the solution was to drain the excess, like unclogging a pipe. This logic extended even to dental issues. If your gums were inflamed, you probably had too much heat or bad blood in your face. So out come the leeches. You press one to his gum, and it latches on with a tiny slurp. The man whimpers. You assure him it's working, even though you're mostly guessing. After all, the thing is still stuck to the inside of his cheek. Now you have to wait for it to finish its breakfast. Mainstream fact, bloodletting was practiced all across Europe for centuries, long before and after it made any medical sense. Monks did it. Surgeons did it. Even noble households had leech jars in the pantry, right next to the wine. It was like garlic for vampires, but backwards. The really charming part? Sometimes, the leeches got adventurous. They didn't always stay where you put them. There are reports, possibly apocryphal, but deliciously disturbing, of leeches wriggling too far down the throat. Picture it, a desperate patient gagging, not from pain, but from a blood-gorged worm tap dancing down their esophagus. Sleep tight. Historians still argue whether leeches did more harm than good, especially in dental contexts. Some believe the placebo effect gave just enough relief to help patients endure. Others say the open wounds left by leech bites often made infections worse. Either way, it's hard to argue with the horror of letting a parasite do your dental work. But hey, you're not just a leech whisperer. Today, someone also needs help with a boil on the gum. You peek inside an old woman's mouth and spot it, an angry red lump swelling beside a molar. Her breath smells like old stew left in the sun. You nod, pretending to know what you're doing, and prepare your knife. There's no Novocaine, remember. Just a quick prayer and maybe a bit of cloth to muffle the scream. You slice it gently. It bursts with a sickening squelch, spraying your hand and apron with foul-smelling pus. She groans with relief. You gag silently and dab at her face with a cleanish rag. Job well done. Now, time for bloodletting round 2. A young man has heard his sore jaw might be cured by letting blood out from somewhere else, say, his arm. So you tie a cord around his bicep, nick a vein, and let a few tablespoons drip into a bowl. Medieval logic, if it's bad in your mouth, maybe it's worse in your elbow. To modern ears, it's lunacy. But back then, it was all about balance. Remove the heat, the excess, the invisible poisons. And if you passed out from blood loss? Even better, now you'll sleep through the toothache. Fringe tidbit for you, there was a popular belief that you could charm gum disease away by whispering to it. Some healers recited rhymes while lancing boils or drawing blood, convinced that words held curative power. The right verse could turn inflammation into calm, pain into peace. You might try it today, though maybe not in public. The rest of your day is a parade of pain. An infected incisor here, a splintered molar there. You rinse your tools with vinegar, fancy, and dry them in the sun like someone who's seen a little too much death. As the evening sets in, you get one last visitor, a young mother with a toddler whose gums are bleeding. She's weeping, convinced the child is cursed. You look into the toddler's mouth and see what's likely just teething, painful, yes, but survivable. You hand her a cloth soaked in cold wine and some reassurance, which might be more effective than anything else you've done all day. After she leaves, the silence settles in. You stare at your hands, raw from washing, and think about those leeches, still writhing in their jar. You wonder how long until someone gets desperate enough to let one crawl up their nose. You're stirring porridge over the hearth when your neighbor stumbles and holding his jaw like it's trying to escape his face. "It's the worms," he mumbles, spit trailing down his chin. "They've come back." You set the spoon down slowly. Worms. Of course. Here's the thing, in the Middle Ages, people believed in tooth worms. Not metaphorical ones, actual wriggling creatures living inside your teeth, burrowing in, causing pain and decay. The idea wasn't even fringe, it was widely accepted across Europe, the Middle East, even Asia. If your tooth throbbed, it wasn't because of bacteria, those weren't even discovered yet, it was because a tiny monster had taken up residence in your molar, and it was having a tantrum. You tilt his head back and look inside his mouth. No worms, obviously. Just a cratered tooth blackened at the core and ringed with inflammation. But that doesn't matter. He's sure they're in there, and your job is to get them out. Enter the folk remedies. You stoke the fire and reach for the tools, a hollow metal pipe, a bit of henbane, and a dangerously untested technique. The plan? Smoke them out. Literally. You light the pipe, packed with herbs, and gently blow smoke into his mouth while chanting one of those half-remembered phrases from your grandmother. Something about Saint Apollonia and the curse of the biting flame. Smoke curls from his nostrils. He gags, coughs, but sits still, because this is what people believe works. You wait. Watch. Nod solemnly as if something supernatural is unfolding before your very eyes. Mainstream fact, the idea of tooth worms dates all the way back to ancient Sumerian texts. Incredibly, it stuck around for over 1,000 years, well into the Enlightenment. It wasn't until microscopes came along that anyone had a better theory. And even then, plenty of people clung to the old story, because it felt right. Pain moves like something alive. It wriggles. It pulses. Surely, that has to be a creature. Once the smoke show is done, your neighbor claims to feel better. Maybe the heat killed some bacteria. Maybe the wine he drank while waiting took the edge off. Or maybe, just maybe, he believes the worms fled in terror. You clean your pipe and wonder how much of what you do is placebo. But then again, when you've got no X-rays, no charts, and no schooling, belief is half the toolkit. Later that afternoon, you're summoned to the churchyard. A woman there has been fasting for days, trying to purge her body of dental sin. Her breath smells like vinegar and stomach acid, and she's so weak she can't stand. You crouch beside her and gently ask about the pain. She points to her jaw and whispers, "God is punishing me." This, too, is part of your work. People think toothaches come from spiritual imbalance, divine judgment for gluttony, vanity, or worse. So instead of seeking relief, they pray. Fast. Suffer. You offer her some warm broth and promise that pain is not a sign of hell opening in her mouth. You're not a priest, but you've given more confessions than most monks. Historians still argue whether medieval folk genuinely believed in the divine causes of tooth pain, or if they used religion to make suffering more bearable. Was it piety, or just the need to make sense of something agonizing and mysterious? As night falls, you're visited by an old man with a solution of his own, powdered sheep's skull mixed with mead. He asks you to rub it on his gums and say the words, mors ex dente, death from the tooth. You oblige, partly because refusing makes things worse, but mostly because you're curious. And also, it's not the weirdest thing you've done today. Fringe tidbit: in parts of rural France, it was common to bury a rotting tooth in a graveyard to kill the worm inside it. People believed the spirit of the tooth would stay buried, unable to return. Kind of sweet, in a morbid way. You perform the ritual as he requested. Afterwards, he smiles, missing several teeth, but grateful. Pain, he says, is quieter now. The irony is, even the quack remedies work occasionally. Not because of science, but because of timing. A boil pops on its own. An infection runs its course. Or the brain simply forgets the worst of the pain long enough for a moment of peace. You sit by the fire and poke at a log, watching embers crackle like tiny explosions. The wind howls outside. Somewhere in the distance, a baby wails, probably teething. You know you'll be called for that too. But for now, you rest. A mouth full of ghosts, a jar of leeches on the shelf, and smoke in the air thick with stories. If there are worms in this world, they don't just live in teeth. They crawl through belief, fear, and the spaces left by pain. You're chewing stale bread, slowly, carefully, because even you don't trust your own molars, when a boy bursts in with a bloody rag pressed to his mouth. His eyes are wide, and he's making little hiccup sounds through the fabric. You motion for him to sit, peel back the cloth, and see, well, not much tooth left. Just a jagged chip poking out of raw gum and the unmistakable shape of a wooden peg jammed into what used to be his incisor. You blink. Someone tried to fix this already. Turns out his father is a carpenter. And carpenters, as a rule, don't like waiting around. When the boy broke his tooth falling off a fence, Dad carved him a replacement from scrap oak and shoved it right into the socket. Problem is, mouths aren't furniture. Gums swell. Wood swells. Now the boy's face is puffed up like a bruised tomato. You gently remove the splintering peg, he screams, you apologize, and swish vinegar in his mouth to clean it. It's crude, but it might save him from the worst, sepsis, rot, or worse, another repair. Mainstream fact: medieval prosthetic dentistry did exist, in a fashion. The Etruscans, centuries earlier, had created bridges using gold wire and animal teeth. But by the time you're living, Europe's lost most of that know-how. Some monks scribbled notes on tooth replacement, but no one you know's ever seen one that worked. Instead, you get wooden pegs, bone bits, or, this one's real, a replacement tooth from a poor person paid to have theirs yanked out. Dental transplants, medieval style. You buy a smile, someone else loses theirs. Historians still argue whether these transplanted teeth ever rooted properly in new mouths. Some records suggest success stories, but it's more likely they just sort of sat there, awkwardly wedged, until they fell out or caused an infection worse than the original problem. Later that day, you're at the marketplace when a tooth seller sets up shop. Yes, really. He has a tray of teeth, human and otherwise, spread out like jewelry. Some are strung on wires, others mounted into what looks like whittled ivory. People browse like they're shopping for shoes. One man eyes a molar suspiciously. Is this one fresh? He asks. The seller shrugs. From a sailor. Lost at sea last month. Barely used. You raise an eyebrow and keep walking. There's another stall nearby with something even more delightful, powdered teeth. The vendor claims it cures headaches and face pain. Just mix it into water or wine, and presto, relief. Probably tastes like chalky regret. Fringe tidbit: some medieval apothecaries sold powdered dog teeth as a cure for teething in infants. Parents would rub it into the child's gums, hoping to transfer the canine strength. Some even kept the tooth in a pouch around the baby's neck, like a tiny, cursed amulet. Your next patient that evening is a knight. Or, more accurately, a former knight who now limps and wheezes like a bellows and smells of horse and pride. He lost a tooth in battle, sword to the jaw, he says with a grin, and now wants a replacement. Not for chewing, he clarifies, just for the look. You try your best. Carve a bit of sheep bone into something toothish, file the edges smooth, and insert it into the gap with resin and linen. He checks himself in a polished bit of bronze, nods, and leaves with a clinking bag of coin. Success. You give it 3 days before that thing starts to rot. As you clean up, you think about smiles. In this world, a full set of teeth is a luxury. Most peasants you meet are missing at least a few. Some haven't chewed properly in years. Bread has to be dunked, meat boiled into paste. It's not just vanity, losing teeth means losing the ability to eat, speak clearly, or even breathe without pain. You recall a woman you treated weeks ago who kept pieces of fabric stuffed into her mouth to hide the gaps. She wouldn't speak in public. Said it was shameful. In a village where everyone has lice and one set of clothes, that says something. You stare at your own reflection in the basin's water. Your teeth, such as they are, hurt most mornings. You chew on one side. You rinse with wine when you can afford it. You dream of soft food, warm bread, and silence. Night falls. Someone knocks again. It's the carpenter. He's holding another little peg. You sigh and beckon him inside. You sit across from the carpenter, both of you staring at the tiny wooden tooth in his hand like it's made of gold. He turns it over a few times, running a rough thumb across its edges. Smoothed it better this time, he says proudly. You resist the urge to roll your eyes. Instead, you gently take it from him, placing it on the table beside your tools. It looks better, yes. But it's still a sliver of oak shaped to jam into someone's skull. He wants you to give it back to the boy. You clear your throat and carefully explain, again, that human mouths are not toolboxes. Wood expands with moisture. Gums bleed. Infection happens. And no, boiling the tooth in wine won't make it holy. Still, he insists. Just for looks, he says. We have a wedding next week. Can't have him looking like a chimney sweep. You don't agree. But you also know this is how people are. Sometimes, they'd rather risk pain than walk around looking incomplete. So, with every caution you can muster, you wrap the tooth in linen, dab it in vinegar, and agree to help the boy insert it just before the ceremony, then remove it afterward. This is medieval dentistry, after all. Half medicine, half pageantry. Mainstream fact, even into the Renaissance, people considered appearance as much as function when it came to teeth. Portraits of nobility often show closed mouths or carefully concealed smiles, because even the rich couldn't escape decay. Sugar was rare, but increasingly fashionable, and you better believe it wreaked havoc. Elizabeth I's famously black teeth. That wasn't makeup. That was rot in royal form. Back in your home, you're cleaning tools by candlelight when you spot something troubling, a black patch on your own gum, near the back. Just a tiny spot. Maybe soot. Maybe something else. You touch it. It's tender. You rinse with wine. Again. This job makes you paranoid. Next morning, you're off to visit a local baker. Not as a customer, but because his apprentice chipped a tooth on a burnt crust. He's been in agony for days, and now his entire jaw is swollen. The poor lad's lying on a flour sack, face the size of a melon. You crouch beside him and gently pry his mouth open. The molar is cracked clean in two, the gum around it dark red and bulging. You reach for your tongs, the long ones, the scary ones, and tell the baker to hold his arms. The boy screams before you even touch him. You wish there were a better way. But it's either this or let the infection spread to his throat, which, in this world, means certain death. So you grip the shard of tooth, brace your foot, and pull. It takes 2 tries. A third, just to be sure. But finally it comes loose with a wet crunch and a splatter of blood and pus. He passes out, which is actually a blessing. You pack the socket with cloth and whisper a small prayer. You're not religious, not really, but sometimes you mumble anyway. Just in case. Fringe tidbit: in some medieval villages, it was believed that a tooth pulled under the new moon would never cause pain again. Some even timed dental procedures with moon phases, favoring waxing moons for extractions and waning moons for healing. Lunacy? Maybe. But people look to the skies because the ground gave them so little hope. The baker thanks you with a pie. It's mostly crust and onions, but you accept it like it's treasure. Later, you eat it slowly, cutting tiny bites and favoring your good side. That black spot on your gum still throbs. You press a warm cloth to your jaw and pretend it's just stress. Historians still argue whether early dentists ever had standards of cleanliness, or if luck played a bigger role in who survived treatment. Some suggest tools were passed between patients with only a rinse in cold water, while others claim more careful healers boiled or scorched their instruments. You like to think you're on the cautious side, though your tongs are pitted with age and your hands, no matter how often washed, always smell of iron and wine. That night, you have a dream about teeth. Not pulling them, not fixing them, but swallowing them. One after another, clicking down your throat like stones. You wake up biting your tongue, heart racing. Outside, a storm begins. Rain lashes the shutters, and somewhere a rooster screams, "Wrong time, wrong animal, wrong place." Everything feels a little off. You get up, light a candle, and check the jar of tools. The tongs are still there. The knives. The linen. The herbs. The leeches, of course, are still writhing lazily in their jar. But your reflection in the window shows a pale face, sunken cheeks, and that spot on your gum. Definitely bigger. You mutter to yourself, then reach for the vinegar. The vinegar stings. You dab it onto the dark spot at the back of your gum, hold your breath, and count to 10. It's still sore. Throbbing, really. And you know what that probably means: abscess. You don't say the word out loud. In this time and place, that's practically a death sentence. There are no antibiotics. No clean surgeries. Just hope and wine and an increasingly intimate relationship with your own pain threshold. Still, you've seen enough to know the signs. Swelling. Pressure. That feeling like your jaw is trying to push itself apart from the inside out. You've watched other people rot from the inside of their mouths outward, delirious with fever, unable to eat, eyes hollowing like graves. And now it's your turn. You wrap a warm cloth around your face and get dressed slowly. If you're going down, you're going to look mildly presentable doing it. You hobble over to your work table and sit. The tongs are there. The mirror. The thin, hooked pick you carved yourself from a piece of old cutlery. You won't pull it. Not yet. But you will drain it. Mainstream fact: abscesses, those infected pockets of pus near the tooth root, are incredibly dangerous without treatment. In modern times, they're drained with surgical precision, followed by antibiotics. In the Middle Ages, the best you could hope for was a successful lance and some potent herbal rinse. Worst case. The infection spreads to the brain, the bloodstream, or the airway. And then it's over. You tilt your head back and position the candlelight. Then you press the hook in, gently, until it finds that soft, swollen place. You hesitate for just a moment, then push. The pain is immediate. White hot. But then, release. A stream of blood and pus spills down your throat, metallic and bitter. You cough, gag, and spit into the basin. It's done. You rinse with wine. Twice. Then again, for luck. You sag in the chair, trembling, but alive. For now. Fringe tidbit: some believe that rubbing crushed emerald on the gums could ward off infection. Others swore by boiled mint leaves, or even soaking a parchment with Psalm 3 and pressing it to the cheek. You've tried them all. The mint tasted the best. The emerald never made much difference. Once your head stops spinning, you force yourself to your feet. The village still needs you. There's a knock, because of course there is. You open the door to find a small girl holding a tooth in her hand. It came out, she says softly. Is that bad? You kneel to her level. She's missing a front tooth, and from the looks of it, it came out naturally. No swelling, no blood. Just a gap and a tiny, pearly shard clutched like treasure. You smile, wincing. That's good, you whisper. You're growing. She beams. Then holds the tooth out to you. Do you want it? You pause. You've got a jar. Everyone knows about the jar. Teeth you've pulled, teeth you've found, even a few gifted ones, like now. You don't know why you keep them. Maybe for trade. Maybe for study. Maybe because every one of them is a story. You nod and take the tooth. Thank you. She skips away, humming. You shut the door behind her, sit back down, and drop the tooth into the jar with a tiny click. Historians still argue whether medieval dentists ever saw themselves as true medical professionals, or more as tradesmen and tinkerers. Some left journals, scrawled notes about techniques, tinctures, and patients, but most left nothing. Their legacy is in the teeth they took, and the people who lived, or didn't, because of them. That evening, you visit a woman known as the Bone Witch. She's not actually a witch, but she knows things, about herbs, pain, and how to keep people from dying in agony. You ask her for something to help with swelling. She gives you a packet of dried lavender, sage, and something she doesn't name. Brew it, she says. Swish, don't swallow. And sleep with garlic by your bed. You nod. You've done weirder. She eyes your face. You look pale, she mutters. And thinner. Busy week, you lie. As you leave, she calls after you, don't let it reach your eye. If it climbs that high, there's nothing I can do. Comforting. You go home and brew the herbs. The smell is sharp, almost metallic, but you follow the instructions. You rinse. You press the garlic to your cheek. You lie down on the cot, listening to the wind creak through the thatch. You don't sleep, not really, but you drift, somewhere between dreaming and dreading. And in the dark, you feel that spot throb, just a little, and try to pretend it's improving. Morning comes slow. Gray light bleeds through the cracks in the shutters like a whisper from another world. You sit up, groaning. The garlic has slid down your face and now clings to your collarbone like some pungent barnacle. You peel it off and toss it into the fire. You feel alive. Barely. But the swelling hasn't worsened. That counts for something. Your jaw aches, but the fever hasn't taken hold. Not yet. You rinse your mouth again, this time with warm sage water. You even chew a little mint for good measure. And then, like clockwork, the day begins, someone's knocking, someone's moaning, someone's offering you a basket of eggs in exchange for help. It's going to be a long one. You find yourself in the house of a blacksmith. He's leaning against a beam, a cloth pressed to his cheek. One eye is swollen nearly shut. It's the back one, he grunts, barely moving his lips. Feels like someone's hammering it from the inside. You nod. He's got an impacted wisdom tooth. Those wonderful little evolutionary leftovers that modern humans don't really need, but still get, often with a side of agony. Mainstream fact, impacted wisdom teeth, where the tooth grows in sideways or fails to erupt fully, were just as much of a nightmare then as now. Without surgical removal, they could cause massive infection, bone erosion, or a lovely thing called a dental fistula, an oozing hole in the jaw that's sometimes connected to the skin. You examine the smith, pressing gently along his jaw. He flinches hard enough to nearly knock over a stool. The tooth is in deep, and it's not coming out the usual way. So, of course, you improvise. You heat your longest iron pick in the coals, not to use on him directly, this isn't that kind of show, but to sterilize it. You pack the area with ground clove and a touch of vinegar, then cut a small slit along the gum to relieve the pressure. He swears so loudly you nearly drop your tools. Bite down, you say, handing him a wad of linen. And if you break it, you owe me another shirt. Fringe tidbit, some medieval manuals actually recommended using a fish spine, yes, an actual dried fish bone, as a tool for lancing infected gums. Supposedly flexible and naturally blessed by the sea. You'll take your iron, thanks. The moment the gum opens, there's a rush of pus and a sound that will echo in your nightmares. The smell is something between boiled meat and wet copper. But the relief is instant. The smith sags, panting, as if you'd removed a demon instead of an inflamed molar. You clean the area with sage water, pack it with mint and cloth, and give him a stern warning not to drink beer for 2 days. He promises, but you both know that's a lie. Historians still argue whether medieval dentists truly believed in the tooth worm theory or simply used it to explain things they didn't understand. The belief was that small worms lived inside the tooth and caused decay by wriggling around and gnawing at nerves. Some even claimed to see them during extractions. In reality, they were likely mistaking infected tissue or broken nerve strands for parasites. Still, many cures involve trying to smoke or poison the worms out. You've tried one of those once. Burned henbane in a pipe, directed the fumes into a patient's mouth. All it did was make everyone cough and hallucinate slightly. Never again. That afternoon, you're visited by a monk. He's quiet, stoic, and, unlike most of your clients, reasonably clean. He's got a toothache, sure, but he's also carrying something wrapped in linen, a manuscript. You raise an eyebrow as he gently places it on your table. I thought you might want to see this, he says, tapping the cover. It's a handwritten treatise on dental care. Latin script, fading ink, but full of weirdly specific advice. Some useful, rinse daily with warm wine and crushed fennel, some less so, avoid eating onions on the feast day of Saint Apollonia. You've heard of her, of course. The patron saint of toothaches. According to legend, her teeth were all smashed out during a Roman persecution, and now she intercedes for those in pain. People still clutch her medallion when you yank a molar. You skim through the manuscript, pausing at a sketch. A set of dental forceps. Elegant. Thin. Not like your crude iron tongs. And beside it, a drawing of what looks like a dental chair, slanted, with a headrest. Luxury. You look at your own stool and chuckle. You thank the monk, and he nods once, almost shyly. Keep it, he says. We have more. You place the manuscript beside your tools. A strange hope flickers in you, like maybe this profession could evolve. Could become something better than blood and linen and clenched fists. That night, you dream again. Not of teeth this time. But of hands. Hundreds of them, reaching for you, each missing fingers or holding out bits of bone. And in the middle stands a little girl with a perfectly white smile, holding out your jar of teeth. You wake sweating, your jaw stiff, but the swelling hasn't come back. You rinse with wine. Then with sage. Then you whisper a quick thanks to Apollonia. Because why not? You're still here. You wake to birdsong. Not the sweet kind, more like squawking crows fighting over something dead in the thatch. Still, it's morning, and your jaw no longer feels like it's being stabbed from the inside. That's something to celebrate. You stretch, crack your back, and wince as a sharp jolt reminds you that pulling your own abscessed tooth still hasn't made it onto any medieval relaxation guides. The herbal rinse helped, and maybe, just maybe, that prayer to Saint Apollonia bought you a little mercy. You heat water for washing and take a look at the monk's manuscript again. The illustrations are crude, but you're obsessed now. One drawing shows what looks like a curved scraper, an early scaler for removing tartar, though they called it tooth stone back then. Another shows a small bone-handled mirror, not unlike the one you cobbled together from a shard of polished bronze. It's exciting, in a strange way. Proof that someone else, maybe centuries ago, was fumbling through the same mess you are now. But before you can get too romantic about the past, there's a pounding at the door. Not a knock. A pounding. You open it to find two men carrying a third. His face is purple, bloated, and shiny with sweat. You don't even have to ask, it's another case of Ludwig's angina. Mainstream fact, Ludwig's angina is a fast-moving bacterial infection of the floor of the mouth, often starting from an infected molar. Without antibiotics, the swelling could block the airway, leading to suffocation. In medieval times, survival often depended on the speed and steadiness of your local barber surgeon, who might also double as your dentist, midwife, and occasional executioner. You wave them inside, clear your table with one sweep of your arm, and motion for them to lay the man down. His breathing is wet and ragged. His eyes, panicked. You whisper calming words as you press on his swollen throat. It's as bad as you feared. You reach for the small knife you sharpen daily, not for cutting food, but for moments like this. Hold him, you say. And they do. You cut into the floor of his mouth, quick and deep. He screams. The smell hits you like a wall, hot, rotten, and coppery. But the relief is instant. A vile mix of blood and pus spills out, and his breathing, though still shallow, evens just slightly. You pack the wound with strips of cloth soaked in clove and salt. Not ideal, but it's what you have. He won't talk for a week. He may never talk properly again. But he'll live. Probably. You clean your tools in silence afterward. You can still feel the heat of his infection on your hands. One of the men presses coins into your palm. Another offers a goat, which you politely decline. Fringe tidbit, in parts of 13th century Italy, it was common to leave a rotting tooth buried in a churchyard as an offering, to rot away sin or pain. Sometimes the bones of saints were ground into powder and mixed with vinegar to create holy rinses. Not many worked. But it gave people hope, which counts for something. You sit by the fire that night, hands still stained, and try to remember the last time you treated a cavity instead of a catastrophe. Even something simple, like chipping away decay and packing it with wax or crushed pepper and resin. Those days are rare. Most people don't come to you until their faces are swollen, their speech garbled, their eyes desperate. Historians still argue whether pain management was ever a serious consideration for medieval healers. Some claim healers used mandrake root, opium poppy, or strong spirits before extractions, others believe these were luxuries reserved for the wealthy, with most patients simply biting leather and praying. You try to offer something, a clove-soaked cloth, a sip of wine, but in the end, the scream is always the same. That night, you're called again. This time to the manor house. A noble woman, elegant even in distress, sits in a high-backed chair, a silk scarf pressed to her cheek. Her tooth is infected. You can tell immediately, it's in the eye tooth, high in the gum, pulsing like a drumbeat beneath her porcelain skin. She looks at your tools like you're offering her a basket of knives. I was told you were discreet, she says, tone clipped. And, effective. You nod once. You've worked on nobles before. They're the same as everyone else underneath the lace and powdered faces. But they expect miracles. She refuses to lie down. So you work with her sitting upright, trying not to wince as the scent of perfume competes with the sour edge of infection. You loosen the tooth with your thinnest pick, then clamp it with the narrow tongs. She lets out a low, strangled sound, not quite a scream, but close. It comes out on the second pull. Blood drips silently into a monogrammed handkerchief. She offers you a ring as payment. You take it, mostly because refusing would cause offense. But you know you'll sell it for salt and wine before the week is out. Back at home, you stare at the ring. Gold. Set with a small sapphire. You wonder how many teeth that stone could buy. Or how many mouths it could save. You place it beside the manuscript. You sleep harder that night. No dreams. Just blackness, thick and still. And when you wake, your jaw doesn't ache. Your gums are pink, not purple. The garlic, the sage, the bleeding, it worked. Or maybe you just got lucky. The morning air is damp, clinging to your skin like wet cloth as you step outside to fetch water. Dew sparkles across the grass, and somewhere nearby, a rooster sounds its smug little victory call, as if he, and not you, survived another night. Your jaw feels tolerable. Which, by your standards, is a cause for celebration. You run your tongue over the now empty socket where your infected molar once ruled like a tyrant. It's healing. Slowly. No signs of creeping rot. Not yet. You pour a ladle of cold water into a basin and splash your face. The sting is sharp, but cleansing. And as you towel off, there's a soft knock at your door. It's a boy. Maybe 10 years old. He doesn't speak, just holds out a note. The writing is jagged, uncertain, like it was scribbled mid-panic. It's from the midwife in the village over. Bring tools. And a steady hand. You sling your pack over your shoulder and follow the boy. By the time you reach the house, it's already crowded. A young woman lies on the bed, face pale, breathing fast. Her mouth is clenched shut, but the swelling along her jaw tells you everything. There's an abscess. Deep and angry. The kind that could end in a very quiet funeral by sundown. You glance at the midwife. She nods. Tooth came in last year. Didn't break the skin. Then it did. Wrong place. Impacted molar. Again. Mainstream fact, impacted molars, especially wisdom teeth, often caused horrific complications in the pre-modern world. Without the benefit of X-rays or anesthesia, extractions were based on educated guesses and feel. If the tooth broke during removal, it could cause infection deep in the bone, or splinters could embed and fester for weeks. You kneel beside the girl. Her eyes are glassy. Her breath smells faintly sweet, never a good sign. You gently part her lips and see the gum bulging outward. Red. Glossy. Ready to split. You need to cut, but not just for relief this time. You'll have to dig. A deep root like this one means bone scraping. And no one wins in bone scraping. Fringe tidbit, some rural dentists used goose quills as post-operative drains, cutting slits in the gum and inserting the quill to allow infection to drain slowly. Others swore by thin coils of silver wire, claiming the metal drew the poison out. Your personal experience. Both tend to slip out when things get ugly. You numb the gum with crushed clove and the dregs of a strong wine. The girl whimpers. You whisper reassurances, not that they'll help, but it fills the space. You make the first incision. Blood wells up like a dark tide. Then comes the scraping. The root is buried, angled wrong. You work with a hooked tool, careful not to slip and puncture deeper tissue. Minutes pass. Or hours. Time stops when you're in the mouth of a dying girl, holding her life between your fingers and a pair of iron tongs. Finally, the tooth gives. Not whole, but enough. You pack the socket, pray, and sit back. She doesn't speak. But she's breathing easier. You stay with her until her color returns. Until her hands unclench. Until her mother begins crying in that exhausted, grateful way that fills a room like incense. Historians still argue whether the tools used by rural tooth pullers evolved independently across regions or were inspired by formal surgical designs passed down from Roman texts. Some believe itinerant tooth drawers invented their own techniques through trial and error, shaped by whatever metalwork was locally available. You've seen everything from fishhooks to tailor's shears repurposed for oral care. Once, a man tried to sell you a tooth wrench made from the claw of a dead hawk. You declined. Later that evening, the midwife brings out an old volume, bound in wool, written in thick ink. She flips to a passage on mouth humors, pointing to a recipe involving onion, vinegar, and pigeon dung. You laugh. She doesn't. You think it's funny, she says, but half of this does work. Not because of the dung, but because someone once believed it did. You nod. Belief, it seems, is half the battle. Maybe even more. As you walk home, night falling behind you, the air shifts. Damp to cold. You pass under twisted branches, crickets chirping in the grass, and you wonder, how many teeth have you pulled this month? 50. 100. Your pouch is heavier, your dream stranger. You see a face in your mind, the noblewoman's, serene after the agony. Then the smith, sweating and swearing. Then the monk, holding his manuscript like a holy relic. And now, the girl. Breathing. Alive. You reach home and build the fire. You don't bother to eat. Just sit by the flames, cradling your hands. They're shaking again. It's not fear. It's memory. Tomorrow, someone else will knock. Someone always does. And you'll open the door. Because you are the tooth puller. The pain keeper. The last stop before rot becomes death. And whether they pay you in coins or chickens or tearful thank yous, you'll do what needs doing. Because no one else will. The sun's weak light filters through the smoky haze as you trudge toward the village square. Your hands are tired, joints stiff, but there's no rest. There's never rest. Today, you're called to a different kind of emergency, a child with a loose tooth causing a fever that won't quit. The mother looks worried, her face lined with exhaustion. The child sits curled in her lap, cheeks flushed, eyes watery. You kneel beside them, gently brushing the child's hair away from a swollen jaw. The tooth is loose, but swollen gums and fever. That spells infection, not just teething. Mainstream fact, childhood tooth infections were especially dangerous because young immune systems often couldn't fight off the bacteria effectively. Many children didn't survive dental infections that today would be handled with a quick antibiotic course. You examine the tooth, tapping it gently with your iron pick. The child flinches, biting down hard. You whisper soothing nonsense, something about dragons and brave knights. The mother presses a cloth to her lips, biting back tears. You know the next step. The tooth needs to come out. Now. You fetch your tongs, sterilize with hot coals, and steady your breath. Fringe tidbit, in some European villages, it was customary to say a little rhyme or prayer while pulling a tooth, to ward off evil spirits who might want to possess the gap. You mumble one under your breath, mostly out of habit and partly to distract yourself. You grip the tooth, pull. The child screams, but it's over quickly. You clean the wound, pack with clove and salt, and wrap a cloth around the child's head for warmth. The mother thanks you with trembling hands and offers you a basket of eggs. You accept, though your stomach churns at the thought of breakfast. You need food, but pain and exhaustion dull the appetite. Later, as you walk back, you pass the village well, where women chatter and children play. Someone is telling a story about a man who claims to have used leeches to cure a toothache. You grimace. Historians still argue whether leech therapy for dental pain ever really worked or was mostly a placebo wrapped in superstition. Some medical texts mention it, most peasants just hated the bleeding. Your thoughts wander back to the manuscript the monk gave you. You leaf through the pages, stopping at a curious note, the devil's tooth. A superstition that if a tooth ached with unusual pain, it was a sign the devil was gnawing at your soul. You smile faintly. Teeth are apparently responsible for everything, pain, disease, damnation. You pause outside your small home, feeling the weight of the day settle over your shoulders like a thick cloak. The night is quiet, save for the occasional bark of a dog and the distant hoot of an owl. You wash your hands, rinse your mouth with sage and wine, and sit by the fire. Tomorrow will bring new mouths to tend, new stories of pain and relief. You close your eyes, letting the crackle of the fire lull you toward sleep. You awake to the smell of damp earth and smoke curling through the thin cracks in your hut. The morning feels thick, almost heavy, like the world is holding its breath. Your jaw aches, but the dull throb has become a familiar companion, like a persistent, unwelcome shadow. Today's call comes not from a single patient but the village elder himself. He's old, stooped, and grumbles about his rotting chompers, like a man with a vendetta against his own mouth. He expects miracles, or at least painlessness. You follow him to a darkened room filled with the scent of stale ale and burning herbs. His teeth are a battlefield, blackened, cracked, and probably harboring horrors beyond what you can imagine. His breath smells like a swamp in July. Mainstream fact: tooth decay was rampant in medieval Europe, largely due to poor hygiene and diets high in carbohydrates, especially among the wealthy who indulged in sugar and honey. The poor often had worse dental health, but the rich suffered from the sugar plague, as it was called. You begin your examination, wincing slightly at the scent but steadying your hand. There's a particularly nasty abscess near a molar. You tell him you'll have to remove it. He growls, "Make it quick." You prepare your tools, an array of tongs, scrapers, and the infamous tooth key, a device designed to grip a tooth and twist it out. It's a torturous instrument, but effective. Fringe tidbit: the tooth key, invented in the 18th century but with predecessors in earlier times, often caused more damage than relief, sometimes breaking jaws or leaving teeth shattered. Despite this, it was the preferred tool for stubborn teeth for centuries. You grip the tooth, counting to 3 in your head. He grits his teeth, and with a quick twist, the tooth snaps free. Blood flows freely. The elder spits and curses, but relief flashes in his eyes. As you clean the wound, he mutters stories of his youth, tales of feasts, wars, and the strange rituals surrounding teeth, like burying baby teeth under the hearth for luck. You listen, fascinated. Teeth weren't just teeth, they were tokens, talismans, signs of fate. Historians still argue whether such superstitions influenced dental care or were merely coping mechanisms for a world where pain was constant and death always looming. After the elder departs, clutching his jaw and muttering curses at your bloody profession, you sit back and reflect. Your hands tremble slightly. The burden of your craft weighs heavily, but so does its necessity. Night falls again. You prepare your tools for the next day, sharpening, cleaning, praying. You wash your face with cold water and stare into the mirror, a polished piece of bronze that's become your closest confidant. You think about the patients you've seen, the faces etched into your memory like carvings in stone. The noble woman, the girl, the child, the elder. Each one a story. Each tooth pulled, a battle won in the endless war against decay. You sigh and lie down, the quiet hum of the night settling around you. Sleep comes, fragile but welcome. The dawn light creeps in slowly, painting your small room with a soft, golden glow. The familiar creak of the wooden door announces your first visitor, a blacksmith, cheeks flushed with fever and hand clutching his jaw. He's back. The same man you treated a few weeks ago. The swelling has returned, bigger and meaner this time. You know what this means: the infection wasn't fully cleared. Probably a broken root left behind, festering like a ticking time bomb. You steel yourself and lead him to your workbench. The smell hits you before he even opens his mouth, a sharp, sour stench that makes your stomach churn. Mainstream fact: infections like osteomyelitis, bone infections, were common complications of untreated dental abscesses, often leading to chronic pain, swelling, and even bone death. You prepare your instruments carefully. This time, you'll have to do more than just pull the tooth. You'll need to scrape away infected bone, a dangerous procedure with no anesthesia. Fringe tidbit: some medieval healers believed that placing a live frog or toad on the infected area could draw out the poison. Others swore by chanting specific prayers or using magical amulets to ward off evil spirits believed to cause infection. You ignore the superstition and focus on the task. You make a deep incision, scraping and gouging, trying to remove every trace of infection. The blacksmith groans, gripping your arm. Hours pass. Blood and pus mingle, dripping into your basin. When you finally finish, you pack the wound with herbal poultices, marigold, yarrow, and crushed garlic. He collapses onto the cot, exhausted but alive. You watch over him as the sun sets, the flicker of the fire casting long shadows on the walls. Historians still argue whether such invasive procedures truly saved lives or simply prolonged suffering in the absence of antibiotics. Some think the risk of death from blood loss or secondary infection was just as high. You clean your tools with shaking hands and sit in the quiet. The blacksmith sleeps fitfully, murmuring about hammering iron and roaring furnaces. You think about the fragile line between pain and relief, life and death. And you wonder how many more times you'll have to cross it before your own hands give out. The night deepens. Outside, the village settles into a restless silence. You close your eyes, feeling the weight of the day settle into your bones. Tomorrow, someone else will need you. And you'll be ready. The chill of the early morning wraps around you like a threadbare cloak as you trudge to the market square. Your bones ache, but the promise of coin keeps your steps steady. Today, you're summoned by a traveling merchant, a man with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, complaining of a persistent toothache that has him grinding his teeth through every restless night. You follow him to his makeshift tent, a colorful patchwork that flaps in the breeze. Inside, the air smells of spices and dust, an exotic blend that momentarily distracts you from the dull, aching throb in his jaw. You peer inside his mouth and spot the culprit, a cracked canine, ragged and jagged like a broken arrow. The pain is obvious. The infection hasn't taken hold yet, but it's circling, waiting for an opening. Mainstream fact: cracked teeth were a common hazard for medieval merchants and laborers, often caused by biting down on hard foods or accidental trauma. Without modern dental restorations, such cracks often led to infections or tooth loss. You prepare your tools, taking care to be swift and precise. The man's patience wears thin as you work, his fingers tapping a restless rhythm. Fringe tidbit: some medieval travelers believed that rubbing the gums with powdered bezoar stones, fossilized masses found in animal stomachs, could stave off tooth pain. Bezoars were prized as universal antidotes, though their effectiveness is, unsurprisingly, debated. You extract the cracked tooth cleanly, then dress the wound with a paste made from crushed herbs and honey, known for their mild antiseptic properties. The merchant nods with relief, already thinking about his next destination. As you pack your tools, he shares stories of faraway lands, cities of gold, seas of glass, and mountains that reach the sky. You listen, half dreaming. The world beyond your village is vast and unknowable, and yet here you are, holding it all together, one tooth at a time. Historians still argue whether itinerant healers like you were respected professionals or mere charlatans wandering from town to town. The line was thin and often blurred, but necessity kept your hands busy. You watch the merchant leave, the sun climbing higher, warming the earth beneath your feet. Another day, another mouth. You think about the long road ahead and the stories you'll collect: pain, hope, fear, and relief, woven together like threads in a tapestry. You tuck your tools away and head home, the evening's cool breeze promising a brief respite. The world outside your door is noisy and chaotic, but inside, it's quiet, just the crackle of the fire and the steady beat of your tired heart. Sleep calls, and you answer. The day wears on, heavy and slow, as you make your way toward the outskirts of the village. A young woman waits beneath the gnarled branches of an old oak tree, clutching her cheek with trembling fingers. She's barely more than a girl, but the pain in her eyes is ancient. You kneel beside her, noticing the telltale signs: swollen gums, feverish skin, and a persistent ache that has driven her to tears. Her tooth is cracked, blackened, and rebellious. Mainstream fact: dental abscesses were among the most common causes of death in pre-modern societies, as untreated infections spread rapidly through the bloodstream, often leading to sepsis or worse. You prepare your instruments with practiced care. This time, the procedure will be swift but delicate. She winces as you begin, biting her lip to stifle the cry threatening to escape. Fringe tidbit: some midwives recommended tooth-pulling songs sung softly during the procedure, believing that music soothed the spirits causing the pain. You hum a low tune under your breath, not sure if it's the music or the clove oil that helps most. You extract the tooth with a careful twist and pull. The woman exhales a shaky breath as the pressure lifts. As you dress the wound, she thanks you with a shy smile, pressing a small bundle of herbs into your hands. You nod and watch her walk away, the pain replaced with fragile hope. Later, as twilight falls, you sit by the fire, reflecting on the day's work. Historians still argue whether the rituals surrounding tooth-pulling, songs, prayers, talismans, held real power or were comforting illusions in a world ruled by pain and uncertainty. You ponder the line between medicine and magic, science and superstition. Your thoughts drift to the manuscript the monk gave you, the one filled with ancient remedies, some sensible, others bizarre. You wonder how many more teeth you'll pull before the world catches up to your craft. Before the fire dies, you wash your hands, ready your tools, and settle down. Outside, the night whispers through the trees, soft and unending. Sleep beckons once more. The village sleeps beneath a blanket of stars, their faint light shimmering through the cracked windowpanes of your hut. You sit quietly by the dying embers of your fire, the familiar ache in your hands now a dull throb, a reminder of the day's labors. Your mind wanders through the countless faces you've seen, the silent suffering and whispered thanks, the stories hidden in cracked smiles and aching jaws. Mainstream fact: medieval dental care was largely a trade of necessity and intuition, passed from master to apprentice, and shaped by a mix of herbal lore, rudimentary surgery, and cultural beliefs. You think about the paradox of your profession, both healer and tormentor, bringing relief through pain, trusted by some, feared by others. Fringe tidbit: in some villages, it was believed that teeth held fragments of a person's soul, pulling a tooth could risk capturing or releasing spirits. This led to rituals involving burying or burning extracted teeth to keep the spirits at rest. You consider the fragile balance you maintain between science and superstition, knowledge and fear. Historians still argue whether medieval dentists like you were pioneers of medical practice or just desperate survivors in a brutal world. The night deepens around you, the village silent except for the occasional rustle of leaves or distant owl call. You close your eyes, the weariness of years pressing gently down. Tomorrow will bring more pain, more stories, more teeth. But for now, you rest. The fire's glow fades to darkness, and the soft hum of the night wraps around you like a gentle lullaby. You breathe in the cool air, the promise of sleep pulling you deeper. And as your eyelids close, the world slows, quiet, peaceful, waiting. You have survived another day. And that, perhaps, is the greatest triumph of all. Now, as you settle deeper into the comfort of your bed, let the images of cracked teeth, smoky fires, and whispered prayers fade softly into the background. The world you've wandered through tonight is a harsh one, filled with pain and uncertainty, but also resilience and quiet bravery. Imagine the flicker of candlelight casting long shadows on worn walls, the faint scent of herbs mingling with the cool night air, and the gentle rhythm of a village slowly drifting to sleep. Feel your own breath slow, your muscles relax, and the day's worries slip away like leaves carried on a gentle stream. Rest is your refuge now, a place where the sharp edges dull, and calmness settles in. Whatever stories tomorrow may bring, for now, you are safe, held by the night's soft embrace. Let yourself drift, peaceful and still, carried by the hum of a world at rest. Sleep well, knowing you have journeyed through history's quiet, painful corners, and come through wiser, gentler, and ready to dream.